All right.
Hello, people out there today. Welcome to our podcast, Champions Are Built. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
And this is Coach Aaron the Source. Guys, we got a special treat for you. We've got two Cal coaches, but probably more importantly, they're two local products. They're two athletes that I've trained at game speed many years ago. I'd have to say these guys are a dying breed when it comes to their work ethic, how they approached what they were doing, and I can't say more about these guys because they were really a pleasure to work with. But without further ado, we've got Chris Bodislaw and Brett Wallace. First, Chris. Chris is entering his second year with the Bears Association, and he's his first year as a pitching coach. His first year,
Second year as a
second
pitching
year
coach.
pitching coach. Okay,
Yeah.
and you served as the director of player development, and he oversaw the team's analytics. He was also a minor league player for the Florida Marlins and the Chicago White Sox. He did locally played baseball here at Freedom High School and also coached locally at Las Madonas College and had a lot of
Yep.
success with his pitchers there. Brett's from the Napa area, and he went to Justin Siena High School. He's now in his first year with the Bears, correct? As their
Correct.
hitting instructor. He spent the 2023 season at Arizona State, his alma mater, where he was the director of quality control and offensive strategy. And that's definitely something that piqued my interest when I saw that. It may be just word verbiage, but I like that. I have some questions geared towards that.
Okay.
Brett was a first round draft pick, 13th pick overall in 2008 with St. Louis. And he spent, what is it, 6 years, 7 years in the bigs with both the Astros and the
Apologize.
Marlins, right? Organization.
Apologize.
Padres, I'm sorry, organization. So great again to have you guys. I always like to see former athletes, see how they're doing, but also like to see you guys come back and talk to the athletes here. First, let's just do a quick origin story. I gave a little bit of background. If you guys want to give a little bit more about, how you guys came up in sports and in baseball and that sort of thing, and then we'll get into some of the other nitty gritty.
Yeah, I'll let Brett go first. Go ahead.
Yeah, like Aaron said, I grew up in Northern California, so in Napa and Sonoma. I played for NorCal baseball, which really kind of exposed me to travel baseball and getting out there and playing against some of the best players in the country. I played at Arizona State for 3 years. That also helped develop me. And then, obviously getting the chance to play pro ball was pretty special. It was a lifelong dream and something that I always wanted to do for sure. I'm excited to be at Cal now. I like getting a chance to pass on the information that all the coaches along the way, yourself included, kind of imparted on me as far as work ethic and things like that make you successful. So it's been a lot of fun being here. I really like the staff and, I'm excited for the season to get here.
Yeah, I mean, my route through this whole thing is probably way different than other people. I mean, Aaron, I came up with you football. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the only thing that I ever loved and ever wanted to do. And that's the only thing I trained for as a young athlete all the way. I mean, until I was probably 19, was probably the 20 years old, 21 years old was probably the first time I ever started training for baseball.
Yeah.
But we trained, we started on the DVC track out there on the concrete hill and the old turf and, bare feet doing feet strengthening stuff and ankles and just trying to knock a 100th off of our 40 time. So I think my route through that, that's where I learned work ethic was that. And I think that, on the football side, that carried over to baseball big time. So I think it's cool. We have a lot of different unique perspectives on our staff. I mean, Brett came up through travel ball and was a first round pick and made it to the big leagues. Our head coach, undersized pitcher and went to the junior college and went to the University of Miami, won a national title and made it to the big leagues. And I played 12 years of professional baseball and hardly played any baseball in high school. So we're kind of proof that there's a lot of different ways to get it done, but the only real way is just to put your nose down and grind. And I know that all three of us did that.
Yeah. Yeah. EJ, do you have a question you want to start off with, or do you want me to start? Like I said, I got a nice little list here.
Well, I know both these guys, admired their work, saw their work. I see their work now and saw it from afar back in the day. And great to have both you guys here, first of all, because I have a lot of respect for you guys as people and as people who are directing young people in sports and collegiate athletics. So that's great to have you guys. I guess my first thing I want to kind of dive into is pretty nitty gritty here. What's going on in the NCAA right now with all these scholarships, increase the scholarships to these universities, Division I, Division II, and say, hey, you guys got 34 scholarships now, and you guys have to cut down your roster, but we're going to give you more scholarships. People don't really understand what that really means. And I think two good resources are here today, Aaron, that kind of talk about how that is applied at Cal, but for a lot of universities, because a lot of people think that these universities have 34 full scholarships and hey, we got 34 roster spots that, eventually, or they're going to get down to 40, 34, whatever. Can you guys kind of help the people out there today explain and understand what the heck is going on? We understand it, but I think a lot of people out there don't understand it. So love to have you guys kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say we don't know yet. And I mean, like, nothing's in place, right? I mean, we know that there's changes and there's big changes coming. That's going to be different for every university on what that means from a scholarship standpoint, from a roster standpoint. At some point, that's going to be set, but we don't know if 34 is going to be in the fall. We don't know if 34 is going to be halfway through the fall. 34 is maybe a spring roster limit. Like, none of those things have been decided. Obviously, there's big changes with an NLI as opposed to a financial aid agreement and what that means. And that's out there, our guys signing. And this year is a mess. Like, it's a mess. Like, it's impossible to plan. You don't really have any idea. And then you add in, obviously, the transfer portal and things like that. There's a lot of things that were put in place to benefit players. And I think it's definitely made building a roster, planning a roster for a 3 or 4 year span incredibly difficult and borderline impossible. So you can't really do that anymore. It's definitely you're planning year to year. You're kind of just waiting to see what happens and then building the best roster that you can possibly build going into the year. So for players that I don't think it's a great place, it's a great spot for, maybe a few guys in the portal or a few guys coming out of high school that are getting NIL money and getting to the place that they want to go. But for the majority of college baseball players, I don't think we're in a great place right now. I do think it's going to shake itself out. I do think that we're going to get to a spot where guys are going to end up at the school that fits them best. I think that's going to be more likely to happen here in the future, as opposed to just ending up at the school that is the best. They're going to end up a school that fits them the best. And for some guys, that's junior college. And for some guys, that's Division II, Division III, mid-majors. I think there's a lot of options and there's a lot of routes. I mean, I played in junior college and, Brett played at ASU and Mike played in junior college. I mean, there's a lot of different routes. But if anybody says that they can give you a solid answer on what this thing looks like right now, then they've got a heck of a lot more information than I do. So right now, with the way that we operate here at Cal is that we're operating under the fact that we still have 11.7 scholarships because that's what we currently know. And we're operating that there's a pretty good chance we're going to have 34 roster spots come next fall. That's how we are treating it at the moment. If we get more scholarship money, great. It's always easy to give people more money. Nobody's mad about that. When you start having to take away spots and take away money, like that, those conversations are a lot more difficult. And honestly, like, we're going to have some of those conversations. Like, there's not a school in the country that's not going to have some of those conversations when you make a roster change from 40 to 34 in a 1 year span. So, I don't think there's anybody who's feels like their roster is in a great place for that change because nobody saw it coming. But, people are going to have to do what they have to do to abide by the rules set by the NCAA.
I love it. Because I think you put a bow on that I think is important. And some of the key points that I hear and Aaron and I talk about is we're trying to fit athletes into their right choice for their school rather than say, hey, go here because that's the best program. I've always believed this in recruiting. Having the right fit is the most important thing for the student athlete, whether it's academically, athletically, socially, environment, coach, et cetera, those that needs to be really accounted for in today's student athletes. So thank you for that insight, because I think people need to hear that. They need to hear the truth, and I think that's the truth.
Well, the truth is on the player side, and I'll let Brett speak on this a little bit, but like those guys they don't have to worry about all these changes. Like,
Right.
do they affect them? Yes. Can they control them? No. Like they have zero control. Like players have zero control, coaches and travel coaches on, placement, like they don't have any control. So it's like, hey, like, listen, we don't have any control over this. So it just goes back down to just like, hey, let me put my head down and work, and where I end up, that's gonna, and I'll let kind of Brett talk about his path to that. It's just like when you're choosing a school, like just control what you can control and work,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think sometimes too, along the same lines, we get caught up in the glitz and glamour of facilities or even NIL money, things like that, instead of the world of like, what's your ultimate goal? Our ultimate goal probably for every college baseball player is to be a big leaguer, right? So finding a staff that believes in you is one, is honest with you is two, and then three is going to develop you. And that's, what we're all passionate about here is player development, like making players better, taking the potential that they have and helping them get to where they want to be. So I think maybe in this world with the scholarship changes and roster sizes and stuff, hopefully players start to understand that they need to pick schools based on what is our ultimate goal, not what is the coolest facility I went to today, or what is the most money that someone offered me up front, because the money you make in NIL money is nothing in comparison to what you make if you get to the big leagues and you play the game that you love forever. So.
No, great. It's great responses, guys, and great question, EJ. I can check one off my list. That's one reason why I like doing EJ. He's always in my head, man. I'm never alone in my own mind. So
when you guys probably just check that question off for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I like the way you guys answered it, because now I always want two things to happen when we do these podcasts. I want them to get the information, but I also want them to really get the truth about the landscape in which they're trying to participate, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about how to get there and what they should be doing and what people are focusing on. And I liked how you guys talked about, hey, there's going to be a different path for, every different athlete, and you've got to figure that out. And I actually want to pull the lens back now and talk a little bit about that, because I want there to be some kind of things that people think about, maybe some action items that they can think about when they're trying to position themselves. Because we use that word a lot when we're talking about athletes and getting recruited, and wanted to get you guys' general thoughts or maybe ideals or strategies that, some high school athletes should be looking at and thinking about when they want to get recruited. Does that make any sense? What are
I'll let Brett speak on that. I'll let
Also,
Brett speak on that from the hitter side, and then I'll
Yeah.
kind of go into the pitching side a little bit.
I was gonna say Bodie probably has some insight too, because Bodie's our recruiting coordinator, so he's definitely the one that is out there rooting for players the most and has all the connections around here. But for me, as an offensive guy, like I like to say, we have to be great self-evaluators, right? And sometimes that takes getting people, yourself, your high school coach, your travel coach, whoever it is, to give you honest feedback on the things that we need to improve on. I feel like too much we're looking at exposing ourselves to coaches and doing all this stuff in showcases instead of becoming a better player. And so for me, it's always about, when I was in high school, I needed to get with you and work on being more explosive, getting better first steps, being able to run the bases more effectively and give my team more than just hitting. So I'm a big proponent of guys trying to become better players and not trying to go to every showcase that they have to. I want them to get with you and work on running and explosion and doing all those things. I want them to get with a good hitting coach that they feel good about, develop their swing and their approach and things like that. I always preach to any kid that I talked to in the past, and to this day, I would still say it is, you need to continue to want to get better every day. If you're the best player in your class, then someone's chasing you and you got to keep going. If you're not the best player in your class, then you should have goals that are well beyond where you are. So I think that's the number one thing for me, is just to see kids that are working, they have a plan, and they're actually getting after it. Not, I went to 17 showcases, I'm probably going to get recruited now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not all exposure is good exposure, but
Mm.
all exposure is honest exposure. Like that's who you are. All right. Like you go out there and you want to be seen, then we're going to see who you are. It's not going to be like, oh, that guy had a bad day. Like, that's fine. I want to see a guy have a bad day. Like, especially if I see a young guy, like I want to see how he handles that failure. I want to see those things. And then a year from then, I want to see if he got better. And I want to see if he worked. And I want to see how he improved. Because I want to know that I'm going to get that same type of thing over the course of 3 or 4 years here at Cal. Like, because to be honest, like most freshmen, they're just not ready to play. And that has nothing to do with like, them being good enough or skilled enough or like they're just mostly not physical enough to handle the speed of the game when they get here.
Ding,
Now,
ding, ding.
Ding,
yeah,
ding,
now
ding.
we are a school that's willing to live with some of that failure. And we started a freshman at short last year. We started a freshman at second. We started a freshman on Friday night in our first game versus Kansas State. We started a freshman at DH that night. So like, but we knew they weren't ready. Like they weren't ready to help us get to Omaha and do those things. But we knew if we played them early, that we were willing to live with some failure along the way. And they developed over the course of that fall as well. And I think that's a plan that's always going to be good for us is being able to get some young guys that we can see get better, but we have to know that the work ethic is there.
Mm.
So like if that's not there and we're going to have to force that and try to pry that out of them on a daily basis, like it's not going to work. Like you're just delaying the inevitable, right? Like sure, I can push you every single day to work. I can push you to do this. I can push you to do that. But at some point, like I'm going to stop because like you have to take ownership over it yourself. And if you don't, if I stop doing that and you stop working, then it's not going to work. So, for us from the recruiting side, makeup is a huge piece. I mean, massive. Like, and that stems from our head coach, Mike New. Like he's massive on the makeup piece because there's a lot of things here when a guy gets here to school that they're going to have to be able to handle from an adversity standpoint, on and off the field, in the classroom, living on your own the first time, making your own dinners, doing your own laundry, things like that, right? So it's makeup is a big part of that and a little bit of toughness and then work ethic, like, and obviously there's some skills that you have to have in order to kind of like cross over that threshold of us really digging in on you from a makeup and work ethic standpoint. But those are massive things. And when you showcase yourself all the time, like you should have those tools, those big tools, like ready to go. Like don't go out there before then.
Whoa. Oh, that's so funny because Aaron and I talked about this ownership athletes need to have, makeup of a player, and exposing yourself. And when you if you don't have these things kind of checked off before you go to these places, you're going to be exposed as we say. So I'm glad you guys mentioned that because so many people don't understand that, that are in our industry that are helping young people go out and try to play at the levels of collegiate baseball. I didn't say Division I baseball. I said collegiate baseball. So glad you guys talked about that. Aaron, what do you got over there, buddy?
Oh man, you guys are checking off my list too fast. It's going to be a short podcast.
And there's different routes, right? I mean, like we have a kid this year named Jacob French on our team, and Jacob has come here and worked his tail off. Jacob was a unrecruited out of high school, went to a Division II school, went to SF State, got a lot better there, and I mean, he was probably good in high school too, but like he just put his head down and worked, and the way the portal is now, he found an opportunity to be here, and those guys over there at SF State did a heck of a job coaching him up, and he enjoyed his time there a ton. He has nothing but great things to say about it. And he's here now and he's doing the same things. He's working his tail off and he's just putting his head down and he's going. And I think that guy's probably always done that. And I think there's a lot of stories out there like that now for guys that want to end up where they see themselves, but it doesn't have to happen now. Doesn't have to happen right now. Like you don't have to have it right now. Like just work. And when you're ready for it, you'll probably get it.
Jacob Finch, I just want to mention, was one of my athletes as well.
I
Yeah.
knew that.
Yeah. I knew that too. I talked to him about it. Yeah.
No, you guys, I like what you're talking about because you hit a couple of things. One of the things I want to go back to, and again, this is kind of on my side of it a little bit, and Brett mentioned this, was readiness of the athletes coming into in the college? Because I know there was a study, a few years back that said something like 80% of most high school athletes aren't physically ready for college sports. And are you still seeing that? Even though there's a perform you can throw a rock and hit a performance training center nowadays. Are you still seeing that these athletes are lacking in certain areas? And what are those areas? Like Brett mentioned, the speed of the game, which is, very key, I think, and a lot of people overlook that. What are some of the things that you're seeing that guys are falling short that maybe they're neglecting? Whether it's the weight room, whether it's the speed, whether it's, some other aspects. Can you guys maybe expand a little bit more on that? Maybe,
Yeah, I think
see, Brett, why don't you? Because hitting, I think from what my experience has been, seems to be the hardest transition for high school athletes to make to the next level. Do you
that's
understand
it.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
I
there
think
haven't been that many big hitters out of the Bay Area since you, dude. I don't know if I'm hard pressed to name one.
I am too, because I know a lot of them. So I'm right with you on that one. So Brett, man, talk about this, man.
I think it's twofold, right? I think you're right. I think transitioning as a hitter is hard because you're facing better arms, you're facing more arms, right? You're playing more games than you're used to playing. There's a fatigue factor that definitely plays into it. And then I also think that part of it is the weight room side that you were talking about is kids that come in as freshmen have mostly not been exposed to that type of strength program. I know like guys that work with you, Aaron, like you guys go through a lot of that stuff. And so they are prepared for it. But I think there's a lot of kids that when they get here, they're shocked by the weight room program and how hard it is. And they kind of, you see that fatigue a little bit more in freshmen. I feel like the first, second, third week, like you see they don't have their legs under them. So we're in the cage working. And I'm like, man, like we can't get as much done because you're fatigued right now because of the workout routine that you're going through. And they're also not used to how long the season is. I mean, we're training in the fall all the way through to the break, and then we're coming back at it and hitting it hard in January. And you're playing, a minimum 56 games. So I think a lot of the college or the high school kids coming in, they just physically haven't been exposed to that enough. And that's why, like, when we have guys like, for example, French came in and he can handle it. He's getting after it every day. He's in the cage early. He's in the cage late. He's killing it in the weight room. He's killing it on the field. He's max effort. And some of those principles that you guys have instilled in him is really cool to see because he's able to work really hard and he's not fatiguing out. He's actually able to come out here and perform. And I think he's a great example of that.
Yeah, on the pitching side, the physicality is a little bit different too, right? Like you have a guy that shows up with, say he's 92, right? Like that's enough velocity when we just talk about a physicality standpoint from a velocity standpoint. But it's like, okay, well, now can you practice every day? Like a lot of these guys aren't used to doing PFPs and picks and things like that, like part of a practice. Like, yeah, dude, we train metrics as much as anybody else. Like we also have to learn how to hold runners. We also have to learn how to field our position. We also have to learn how to back up bases. On top of that with the weight room. And then on top of that, academics. Like, do you have time management skills? Like those are the things that really prevent. I mean, we actually pushed our fall back this year where we started games a little bit later because one of the things we realized last year is that the guys coming in, it was a little bit too much too early. Between the academic switch, the living on your own, the weight room, eating differently, hopefully better, and then, different practices and longer and things like that. It takes them time to get acclimated.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are acclimated sooner have a better chance at success.
Mm-hmm.
But, they all figure it out in their own time. And that's part of your job as a coach too, right? I mean, that's your part of your job as a coach is to kind of get them acclimated and help them through the hard times and the transition and becoming a freshman. But then you get into the season and now you're talking about, dealing with adversity. A lot of these guys, that's the biggest thing is, you get a guy at this level, he hasn't had a lot of failure in his life.
Right.
And I promise you it's coming. I do not care what your name is. I don't care how good you think you are. I don't care if you're an All-American in high school or not, you are going to get here and you are going to fail at first. Okay. And you're going to fail throughout it. I think, Brett can speak to this. I think the jump from high school to college was a bigger jump for me as a baseball player than it was college to like my first year of professional baseball.
I agree.
Like, I thought it was a way bigger jump. Like I was way more like a fish out of the water my first year in college baseball than I was my first year in professional baseball. I was way, way underprepared from a just a time management and handling everything standpoint. And then even honestly, like the skill level jump like was a little bit bigger. Like, yeah, we faced better guys in professional baseball, but faced really not very good guys in high school. Like once every 2 weeks, maybe. Like you're gonna see somebody good every weekend here, every Friday, every Saturday, every arm out of the pen. I mean, we're in the ACC, like there's not a pushover team. And then you talk about the mid majors on the West Coast, like they're good too. Like so every night, like you got to be ready. You don't get a day off and adversity's coming. So you better be able to handle that.
Yeah. And on the hitting side of it too, I will say you guys kind of asked about like hitters coming in and finding more success early. It's been kind of a dry spell a little bit. And I think there's a couple avenues of that too, right? One is that you go to a program sometimes for the wrong reasons and you don't have a staff that believes in you. Like Bodie talked about us running out freshmen last year and giving them a chance to actually succeed. And they did fail at times, but they had really good years and they finished out strong. You have to go somewhere where people believe in you and they want to give you a chance. And the second is you have to go somewhere where you can be developed as a hitter. Because when you come in as a high school hitter, like Bodie said, you're not facing the best guys in the country. You're not seeing elite stuff all the time. And also you're playing in a lot of showcases. So you're not necessarily having team at bats where you're worried about grinding out at bats and how to be, doing the right things. So then when you come to college, you need someone that's going to be there and kind of help develop you as you go. And we give you a long leash to try to do it, but you need someone that's giving you the tools like, hey, this is how we develop. This is how we have a good at bat. This is how we get ready on time. This is how we flush bad at bats and continue on, things like that. So I think it's a lot mental as much as it is physical as well.
Man, great points, guys.
Yeah.
Aaron, I just like what these guys are saying because it's so true, and I hope all the people that are listening to our podcast today just understand that you guys are getting really sound advice from people who are giving you like honest opinions about what they're seeing in the industry, in collegiate baseball, not just at Cal, but what they're seeing. And, I always say this, a network of coaches and in college baseball is immense, and they talk to each other about stuff that they're going through. And it's such a great resource to have these two guys here today, Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great answers. Again, you guys are kind of anticipating what I want to ask. And I know Brett's only got about 4 minutes, so I want to direct this to Brett. And then Chris, you can expand on this. Brett, you played with one of the most storied travel baseball organizations in the country at NorCal, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on travel baseball. I know it was a vehicle for you. Obviously, it's there's a lot out there and things have changed. What are your thoughts on travel baseball now? Maybe take it from there.
I think travel baseball is super important because, like we were talking about, facing the top competition. The only way.
Can you guys turn your volume up a little bit? I think your mic went out a little. Oh, yeah, try it now.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. I think the thing about travel baseball that's really cool is that you get to go out and play against the best players in the country, right? You get to go to tournaments and showcases and things like that, and you get exposure against better players. So it's going to be at times potentially humbling, but it's going to help you, like we talked about earlier, like figuring out what do I need to work on? Like what are my weaknesses? And then let's go attack them every day at home, And so for me at NorCal, that was basically the best part for me was I got to play the best players in the country. We played a really hard schedule, but Rob was really brutally honest with us as well. Like he was like, hey, these are your strengths. These are your weaknesses. If you could, get a more explosive first step, it's going to make a huge difference for your game, things like that. So we were honest with each other. And the other thing is we took a lot of pride in winning every game we played. Like we didn't play it like a showcase. We played it like we're trying to win every inning, every game. We want to leave no doubt that like we are a premier team and we are like a group of guys that not only like are talented, but play the game the right way. So I think travel ball is super beneficial, especially when you're with the right organization and they have the right intention and they're teaching you those things. I think it's super important for players to do that.
I think what Brett said is about winning the games is like really big. Like that's like I think there's travel teams at times or people join a travel team because they feel like it's their best route to get to X college. And it's just like, well, like you should join the team because you feel like it's a great route for you to get better as a player, play against great competition and go win. Like, let's go win. Like, and that's, ultimately that's why we started playing and that's never going to change.
And in regards to travel baseball, Brett, I know you only got a couple minutes and I'll let you go. What advice would you give to parents in terms of maybe when should their kid start playing travel baseball? You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be an age, but you know, what skill set should they have in place, or what, you know, what would you be seeing to say, hey, you know what, my kid's ready now, or what's a logical progression? You know, little league, pony, da 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 da. You know, what
You
would
know,
you
kind of like Bodie talks about, there's a lot of paths that you can take, and he actually probably knows the travel ball industry better than I do, especially nowadays. But I
You
think,
got a son though in travel hockey.
yeah, my son does play travel hockey, so
There you go.
he's
You're
8.
same
So
thing.
here we go.
Yeah.
I think honestly the biggest thing is there's a couple things. One is you got to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, right? They have to be 100% like being a travel baseball player and then being a collegiate baseball player and being a major league baseball player. It takes a lot of commitment, time, and work. And too many times I think you see parents that are kind of pushing their kid to be a baseball player. Like, hey, you're going to go play on this team. Let's go do this. And the kid's not locked in on it. If he's not 100%, he shouldn't be playing. Physically, I think you should be developed enough that like you're actually close enough to where colleges can evaluate you. If you're talking about 7th graders, like we're still seeing them grow and change. Like, what are we evaluating right now? Like, I'd rather those guys be playing competitive games somewhere and learning how to win, because I think learning to win is a skill. And I think that's super important that we've taken away from the youth of baseball right now. And so I honestly think physically you have to be close enough to where we can actually project you onto our roster. And then I think number 2 is like, you know, like I said, you just got to love it. You got to have a kid that really is like, I'm okay doing this whenever. Like we came to your place weekdays after school, and it wasn't because like my parents forced me to come. It's because I want to be a big leaguer, and this is something that can maybe make me 1 or 2 or 3% better, and then it's going to increase my odds, and that takes a lot of commitment. And I think if you don't see that commitment from the kid, then it's kind of like we're spinning our wheels here. We need to they need to make the decision for you.
Great answer.
I would want to see my son love doing the not fun things, the quote unquote, like before I probably really went down that road. Like I want to see him really enjoy everybody's going to go hit in the cage. Every single kid is going to go hit in the cage. Like that's fun. Like, are guys going to go lift? Are they going to go run? Are they going to go take extra defense reps? Are they going to work on their base running? Are they going to do things like that? And when my son if he shows me at some point, he's 6 years old, that he's willing to do all those not fun things, then yeah, that's probably a path that I'm willing to go down with him. But until then, if it's just like, hey, I just like hitting in the cage and having fun with my boys, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, but that just like, yeah, we're just going to play baseball then and enjoy it, which is great too. It doesn't have to be that other path. That's probably what I will look for personally.
I will say, just to touch on what Bodie said about hitting in the cage, I find it interesting is that there's a lot of people that want to come into the cage and hit. There's less people that want to come into the cage and work. And so for me, when you come in the cage and it's, hey, we're really intentional with every rep we take. Let's get better with what we do. It could be 10 swings, but let's take 10 really intentional swings that are going to improve us or take us another step in the right direction, and then we'll shut it down and you go home. There's too many guys that come in and they hit off the machine and it's just like, hey, I was in the cage all day. And it's like, well, did you get better? No, because it's like they're doing something. They're checking a box they think people want to see. Hey, I'm in the cage. Or, hey, I love to hit because if I just swing for homers, it's super fun.
Yeah.
But if you want to be special, like your work ethic has to be special. And it's not just how hard you work, it's how focused and detailed your work is. So I think that's another element. I think we have a group of guys here actually that have been really cool about that. We hit early and we work on specific things that, hey, this is what's going to make you better. Like, this is what you need to work on. So let's focus on that. That way, when we get to practice, we're just competing.
Yeah.
Love
Great
that.
answer. Well, I know it's 11. You got to go, Brett, but I'm glad you're able to come on. We'll definitely want to have you back. It's good
Yeah,
seeing you,
anytime.
brother. Been a while.
For sure.
Got the next generation of Wallace in my gym now. Your
Yeah.
little nephew.
Yeah.
So it's great. Great.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you guys having me, and anytime I'm happy to come back, and I need to get out there at some point soon.
Yeah. Anytime. Come on through.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you guys later.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
See you down
Okay.
there.
You'll bring it back.
Yeah.
So Bodie, God, you're just, your answers are like check, 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 check. But here's a question,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of moving about, for lack of a better term, in college sports now. You know, in other words, guys are pretty pedestrian. They're nomadish. In other words, you know, you hear the story about French, where he's at, you know, One
Mm-hmm.
school then moves to another. With all this moving around, that's obviously changed the landscape of where guys ultimately land and when and why they move on. And I just want to have a question because I see a lot of this and one thing I wanted to find out is what are some of the reasons why scholarships are revoked or rewarded now? Because there's such a environment of producing now, you guys have the luxury of picking a couple guys and investing in them as freshmen and saying, hey, these are kind of our long-term investments, guys that we're going to bring in and get them into the system early. And, hopefully they'll develop and they'll kind of start to build that core, I assume, of your program. But I'm sure you also have guys who are kind of, in and out, and you guys are always evaluating. You talked about, you were part of your job was analytics and quality control. And I wish I could have got to Brett before he left because I also
Yeah.
want to ask him that, especially on the hitting side. So we got to have him back to talk about that. But, what are some of the reasons why maybe kids are let go? And one of the things that you've been a recurring thing of your answers that I love is you talk about the intangibles. And me and EJ talk about that a lot. Work ethic, time management, handling things that aren't just baseball related. So, I kind of went a lot of different ways on that question, but if you get the gist of it, what's your response to that?
I mean, most of it's player driven, right? Like if you're good enough, you're probably not in that boat. Like and it doesn't mean that that's an opinion based on our staff or another staff or whatever, right? It doesn't mean that it's the right opinion. So I think as a player, if you if you leave no doubt, you probably don't put yourself in that position. And then obviously there's academic reasons. There could be off the field reasons. I mean, like when I'm personally recruiting a guy, I'm calling every single person around him, whether it's mom, dad, English teacher, somebody who's constantly around that person. Like I want to find out who that person is. And like when we talk about makeup, like if I get bad reports, and it's not just our guys that we're recruiting, maybe it's our current commits. I want to continue to stay on that and see how that person is developing, not just the player, right? So, as far as why like scholarships revoked from guys that are, whether they're on a college roster or they're committed to a college roster, could be for a lot of reasons. One, maybe the player committed too early. And like Brett said, like that school, based on the rules, was forced to make an early evaluation on that player and an early commitment on that player. And really, they just did it to do it. And they weren't really certain about it. And, they decided later. And then two, I mean, like guys, it's just rule changes. Like, like sometimes this is one of those weird ones where there's just rule changes right now and you just have less roster spots. And the way that I think of that is like, okay, if we had 34 and you say you are dropping a player or something, or that player gets dropped, would that player have been recruited in the first place if it was a 34-man roster? And the answer is probably not. Like you recruited them because you had 6 extra roster spots and you were filling a 40-man roster. Right. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. If I was a player and I was looking at it, I would just leave no doubt. Like, hey, I'm gonna be so good. I'm gonna work so hard. I'm gonna check every single box that I'm just gonna leave no doubt. Like you have no choice but to keep me because you know that I am going to help you win baseball games.
Yes.
Because that is what it comes down to. Are you going to help us win baseball games or not? Can you make us believe that you're going to help us win baseball games? And you have to do that by your performance, by your attitude, by how you take care of business in the classroom. Because if I don't think you're eligible, then you can't help us win baseball games. Everything, how you treat your teammates, everything. So if you make me believe that you're going to help Cal win baseball games, you're probably going to be on this roster if we have a spot.
Ooh. Wow, hey, Aaron, this is so funny. My dad told me this years ago, bless his soul. He told me that he told me, EJ, you want to play one day? I said, yeah, Pops, I want to play. I love this game. He says, well, let me just check all the boxes Coach Bodislaw just talked about. That's what he said. He said, all those things you mentioned, he said that. He'll leave no doubt that you're the best if you want to go play at the next level. Collegiate baseball, you want to go play Major League Baseball, just leave no doubt, and then you won't have anything to worry about. And that took all these things you talked about, Chris. You talked about doing the extra work and the commitment, the focus, being a good teammate, taking control of the classroom, all that stuff. And I think, these things, people don't realize that this is how it's done. And there's no two ways about it. You got to put your head down and you got to go to work.
Absolutely.
No,
Aaron, man, Aaron, what you got over there, man? He just hits every note we talk about. It's funny. It's like, hey, boy, he mentioned
now
this.
I got two people in my head.
Yeah,
it's almost like I grew up like trading with Aaron or something. So like,
Yes, grasshopper.
Yeah.
Too funny, man. Too funny.
One of the things that I see a lot of.
That was a door, by the way. That wasn't me. So
no worries. Is there, and you guys talked about a little bit, there is a lack of physicality in athletes now. And one of the things we were talking with the strength conditioning coach of the Angels on our last podcast was that, is there a point where you guys find that you're having to do a lot of remedial work with these guys because they were never exposed to the right things to begin with? And the reason why I ask this is because I'm trying to give people those little nuggets to handle business before you have to handle the business, or before the business handles you.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm leading you. And so what maybe be some of those areas, even if you're just talking from a pitcher's standpoint, because everyone, chases the velo, but like you said, there's other things. And I love the point that Brett made about not just hitting, but learning to be able to hit in competitive situations. So not just hitting home runs. And, he said that was another thing that he had to make an adjustment to at the next level. And I don't know if you guys approach it that way. Just like, everyone chases 90. Okay, you can throw 90, you can get scholarship. But it's like, can you pitch? Because at a certain point, so maybe what are some of those things, even if it's just from a pitching standpoint?
Please do.
I mean, overall as a player, when it comes to the weight room, I mean, I'm really close with our strength coach, Coach Mike Velasquez, who's
Mike,
does an unbelievable job with our guys and very individualistic approach. But he's got to start from the ground up when they get here, right? There's a lot of guys that it takes longer, so they haven't been exposed to the weight room. And on the baseball field, it's the same thing. As a coach, I'm gonna assume that when I have a group of guys that they know nothing. I'm going to assume that they know nothing. I mean, I've coached in junior college for 10 years and I've coached here. The difference isn't what they know. These guys maybe are just a little bit more physical and a little more talented, but they know the same amount as those junior college guys, which is for the most part, when it comes to how to win, next to nothing. They have to learn how to win and they may want to win but they don't know how. They don't know how to, just take a team at bat or how to just compete on a day where you don't have your best stuff, right? Like things like that. So I think those are the things that definitely that freshman fall, you have to really pound into their heads about like, hey, like, oh man, coach, I don't got my best stuff today. Or, hey, I'm not going to throw my curveball today because it didn't feel good in the bullpen. Like, all right, well, like, what's going to happen when you need that thing in the third inning, second time through the lineup, and you haven't thrown it? You're just going to assume that it's not good that day. Like, it's a mindset standpoint. Like, you really have to flip their mindset. I think at times we have to help them change how they think on a daily basis. Handling adversity, obviously, we talked about, but from a preparation standpoint, as far as being physical, I think that people make a lot of excuses. I had a hard time gaining weight. Okay. when I was young. I wasn't going to be super physical in college unless I made a change.
Right.
But I had a hard time. I still got it done. Like it's doable. Like there's a way to do it. I mean, at one point I was, training with you and I was waking up 2 or 3 times a night in the middle of the night to eat, like throughout the entire night because I wasn't able to eat enough throughout the day to gain the weight that I needed to gain. It was incredibly hard. It was horrible. It sucked, but it got done. And I think like I hear a lot of things, well, this is too hard to do. Okay, well then you don't want it that bad. Like, this is hard. I can't gain weight. I don't have time to lift. Like you have time. If you've got 10 minutes to spend on your phone, then you have time to do something that's beneficial for your future
Yeah.
instead of that. So like there is time. It's just guys learning how to use that time properly.
Yeah. Time management. I think a lot of young athletes out there don't understand time management and don't understand how to use that time to the best of their ability. And I think a lot of athletes need help with that. And that's something Aaron and I talk a lot about on our podcast is about, make great use of your time. It doesn't mean you have to be in there 3 or 4 hours, but if you could get some quality work on in a consistent basis, you can grow and you can do it. And you know what? It takes hard work to do this. And I think sometimes young people have time working hard in this generation because everything is so instantaneous in what we have. We can use Chat GPT and it gives us an answer. We can just go look on the internet here and it gives us an answer. But the answer really is in your mindset and your work ethic. So I'm glad you mentioned those things.
Well, and are you willing to make the important things important, right? Like, and do you believe that they're actually important? I mean, Aaron, one of the things that'll prevent a pitcher from pitching early would be like, the ability to not hold runners. It's like, hey, do you find a way? Maybe you don't get a chance to work on that in high school, but do you spend time on it on your own? Hey, I'm not going to give up stolen bases. I'm going to hold runners. Like, yeah, is it my job to teach it to you when you get here? Sure, it is. Absolutely, it is. But if I have to spend time teaching you that, that's one less thing that I have to spend time teaching you to get better at this level, or maybe work on your breaking ball, or I can't work, hey, let me teach you to have three really good pitches. If every time a runner gets on first base, you can't execute any of those pitches in a slide step.
Right.
You can do it out of the windup, but like, all right, now we have to work on your slide step. I'm not really worried about your pitches, right? Like until you can execute these from that, they don't really do us any good because most of your great pitches and your big pitches are going to be thrown with runners on base. So, just little things like that. I mean, the reality is for these guys to get to where they want to get to, they have to get better at everything, not just one thing. They have to get better at every single part of their game from the day they arrive until the day they leave. So we're going to work on all of it. And I'm not expecting any guy to show up ever and know all of it. We're constantly going to work on it, whether even when I think a guy has it down and he's pretty nails on it. Like you're not going to stop working on it because it goes away as fast as you got it, right? So you're going to continue to work on it. So it's everything. It's just trying to check every box and improve every piece of your game, every piece of your body from a mobility standpoint, physicality standpoint, right? I mean, I think that's kind of we tend to focus on one thing and be like, man, if I get this better, I'm going to be good. And it's like, no, dude, you got to get better at every single thing that you do to play at the highest level because those guys are, I mean, if you think about, I mean, I was talking to a coach last night, and if you think about like the worst starter in the big leagues, like what that guy would do to a college lineup, like, right? Like, so like, you know what I mean? It's like the people that you're trying to compete against, like I remember watching my very first professional bullpen when I got to the Marlins and I watched a big right-handed pitcher named Josh Johnson throw.
Oh, Josh.
And I looked at him and I thought I was really good. And then I watched him throw his bullpen and I was like, I can't do anything that he just did. Like he is so much better than me. And I'm, as of right now, a professional. And he is so much better than me. It's not even close, right? Just the easiness in which he goes through things. But it's not easy. It's because of all the work that he did. It just looks easy. Because, people are like, oh, he's a freak. He makes it look easy. Like, yeah, maybe some guys are more athletic, but that dude also works his tail off, probably harder than those other guys. And yes, he was also born with some things that some people just don't have.
No, I love your response about time management because we talk about that all the time. And I know it's probably not appropriate to quote Diddy in these times, but Diddy was asked what made him different than and more successful than others. And because he says, I have the same 24 hours everyone else does, but I choose to use them differently. And, again, that says it all. It's how you decide to use that time.
Yeah, and we're in like an era now where we know more about like sleeping and recovery and things like that, right? Where where I didn't grow up in an era where sleep was something that you prioritized from
Yeah.
a getting better standpoint. Like that wasn't ever something that was really told to me. It was just like, hey, if I get up before everybody else and I work harder than everybody else, I'm probably going to be better than everybody else. Be more of the Kobe Bryant mentality, right? Like I'm going to put in 2 hours before you even get out of bed.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of guys that'll lean on that. And I get it. Like, there's a lot of big time. I mean, JJ Watt, I heard talk about 10 hours a night, and our guys are prioritizing sleep. We have sleep studies, we have things like that.
Yeah.
And there are definitely days for that. And then there's days that, sometimes there's just something to being the first one at the field and the last one at the field, and just what that can do for you mentally to know that when you compete against any of these guys that you put in more time for them. More like, yeah, dude, maybe that guy has better recovery than me. Maybe he's slept more than me. But you know what? I have put in more hours than he has. And when that guy's standing in the box across from me, that is an advantage in my mind. Like just to know that I can absolutely dominate him because of how much more work I feel like I have done. I have no clue about his work ethic, but if I believe that, there's something to be said for that.
Right. Mindset.
Yeah.
A lot of athletes lack mindset in this generation, my opinion. Mindset's super important. And even the most confident players lack mindset at times because of what you said earlier about failure. You're going to fail, and you need to learn how to handle the failure and how to grow and move on and even make your mindset better because of that experience.
Yeah. I'm sure, Aaron, there was a time when I was training with you young where, we're doing some running stuff and maybe we're a little bit too tired to get the actual physical benefit out of it, right? But like there was a mental benefit of that.
Oh yeah.
And there was a mental benefit of it being 105 out and running up a hill. We probably got past the point sometimes of a physical benefit.
Oh yeah.
But like, and I didn't realize that then. I didn't know anything about it. You did at the time. But like you knew like, hey, if I can get this dude to push for one more sprint, he's going to
Right.
have an advantage. Like he's not going to get any faster because he's dog tired, but
Right.
he is going to create an advantage.
No, there should always be a little wax on, wax off in what you do.
Yeah.
And,
Like it's just
no,
that edge, man, that edge of just knowing that you can go to a different place than other people can go to.
that,
Like,
yeah, that builds that fortitude in you. I know
yeah.
we only got maybe about 10 more minutes, and I wanted to shift gears to you're only 2 years removed from the JC landscape. I'd like to talk a little bit about that because that's changed drastically, with guys bouncing back and, all of those sorts of things. Again, kind of this whole flow of athletes up and down and that sort of thing. And, we did a podcast a couple years ago about, JC being a viable choice.
Right.
And that landscape has changed because of, the portal now and everything. And I wanted to get your thoughts because now before, you had a 17-year-old who would graduate and say, okay, I'm going to play JC and kind of think it was this kind of easy slide, into
Mhm.
JC level. But now that slide's not so easy. They're coming against guys who are now maybe 21 years old versus 19 or 23 years old. Guys
Yeah.
who are much more physically, fit. Plus, those are guys who now have maybe 1 or 2 years of collegiate baseball experience. And so, what would you say to kids who are thinking about the JC as a viable option, and maybe what they should be ready for, and maybe how to prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, I love JC baseball. I've seen, JC baseball make a couple different transitions, right? I mean, draft and follow, when that was a thing, JC baseball, there was guys turning down the best colleges in the country to go to junior college because they wanted to be drafted in the first round. So, when I was in junior college, you're playing against guys that got drafted in the third round the year before, but decided to go to a JC, and now you're playing against a potential first round pick in California JUCO. Like that was a thing. Like, and that was a big thing. I mean, there was a time where I watched Sac City have 4 guys that were redshirted get drafted. Like, they were loaded. I mean, and all these teams were like that. And then it kind of transitioned into, all right, now there's the draft and follow didn't exist. So more guys are going to straight to Division I schools. And then I watched it kind of transition into, okay, if I go to a JC, I'm a failure. So I'm going to take this Division II opportunity or this Division III opportunity and not go to a junior college, because even though I don't want to go to that 4-year school, I just don't want to go to my local JC because that means that I messed up or my family messed up. Like I sat in many living rooms, and one of the reasons that people didn't come to our JC was the perception.
Yeah.
The perception of what it looked like happened along the way. Like they made mistakes. And that is something that I always had a hard time dealing with, just because like I didn't understand it. It's like, this is still a college baseball opportunity. It's a chance to keep a uniform on, and it's a chance for you to continue to grow and still achieve the things that you want to achieve in this game and in life, from an academic standpoint, right? I think right now we're in a place where JCs are about to get really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good again. They're about to become loaded, right? I mean, you're talking about Division I's going from 40 to 34. You're seeing a trickle down effect of that. And then, I think more and more guys are going to go, you know what? I really want to end up at X school. And so let me go to this school first and do better and prove that I can go play there. Right. So I think you're going to see that more and more often. I think that comes down to what we kind of started this with, where you're going to see more guys end up at the place that's the right fit for them. And I include JCs in that. And I also think like your local JC, especially here in California, like, I think your local JC is a great option. Like, I mean, you get to save money, you get to, go home and eat. We talk about not being able to eat right, and gain weight and things like that. Well, like try living on your own, eating ramen and PB&J. Like, don't you want to go home on your mom's cooking and go have a good meal every night to help you gain weight? Like, stay home, go to your local JC, bust your tail. To me, every single environment that you put yourself in is going to be what you make of it. So if you want to work really hard and get the most out of that environment, then you can. And if you don't, then you won't. I'm a big advocate of JC. We have quite a few JC guys on our roster. I obviously coaching there. I think that they learn a little bit of a different edge as well. There's a toughness aspect to it. I mean, those guys, a lot of places, they don't have a locker room. They're doing their own field work, right? Sometimes they don't have the right hats and pants and stuff during the fall. And they just want to play, man. Like those guys want to play. They're willing to do whatever it takes to keep a uniform on. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, I agree. Again, there's a different mindset.
Yeah.
It was the same for the track and field athletes when I coached over at Chabot. It's just, it was fun time though. Really fun time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go play at a junior college, like you clearly want to keep that uniform on. You're not doing it just to do it. And you know what? Like what I would tell guys is like, go watch a junior college baseball game and go see where you think you might fit in that lineup and be really honest with yourself. Because we had plenty of guys that thought they were going to stroll in and play right away and they weren't good enough. We had guys that would bounce back from 4-year schools and they'd show up with this, like, I don't belong here attitude, and they'd get beat out by guys that just fit into the program and knew how to help us win a little bit better. Right. So, it's good baseball. It's different all over the country. I know at some JCs, they'll give scholarships out of state. California JUCO is not one of those, but there's a bunch of them that you have a chance to play at. So finding the junior college I have a chance to get on the field, that's big. But when guys go to junior college, what I tell them is just like, be ready, man. Don't think that this thing's going to be a walk in the park. Like, you're not just going to stroll in there and just dominate. Like, it's not that easy.
Some of the most hungriest guys at the JC level. And usually you can always tell those are the guys who want it. Otherwise they wouldn't be there. They would stop playing. So those are probably some of the most dangerous guys. I think you're going in, you're jumping in the Shark Tank if you go to a good JC program.
Oh,
You are. You are.
You're going in the Shark Tank.
you
Yeah.
are. You are. I tell you, Aaron, this has been great today to be able to have different subjects, but the levels of the layers that we're peeling off on this has been outstanding today.
Let me flip this and ask you guys a quick question from your guys's on being on that side, okay? What are what are some things that you feel like during these changes in times that colleges can do, you know, for their recruits or their commits or things that you think some schools do a good job of or whatever, just from your guys' side of it. I mean, I always want to learn like things that I can do better, right? Is as a recruiter, as a coach, you know, a communicator, a leader of young men, everything. Like, what are some things kind of during this kind of weird times that you feel like schools and coaches can do better on our side?
Well, I think you hit it on the head over and over again.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that most kids are lacking or are those intangibles that we
Yeah.
talked about. Me and EJ, we're gonna again, one of our next podcasts is just gonna be on what's the emotional, mental makeup of your athlete.
Right.
And are you really being honest with yourself that this is who this kid is?
Right.
And regardless of his athletic or technical skill set, there may be some character things there that are going to, like you said, hit them in the face at the next level because that pressure cooker is going to be there. And we haven't really been able to figure out how to crack the code on that, but it's something that you guys are screening for. But obviously there's some kids that get through and all of a sudden you see some of these things like, oh man, this guy may not be a gamer. How do you turn that thing around? We're trying to figure that out ourselves. And
More competition is the way that we kind of see it. It's competing in practice in everything that we do.
Yeah.
And then you get like you know, you see Saban and like Knight say it like I think more guys need to get benched. You know, like that's I mean, that's something that drove me when I was young. Like it's like, oh, like I got beat out. I don't get to play. Like, all right, well, like I don't want that to happen. So like I'm not gonna lose. Like I'm gonna go work harder and I'm gonna beat that guy out. Like, or hey, coach didn't approve of what I did on the field or what I did, like it didn't help our team. I got benched. Like that normally wins. Like that's a really good way to get through to a guy and then the competition aspect. I think you guys probably do a good job in training on you know, even just competing in little things like, you know, and having a winner and a loser and you know, maybe there being some sort of a, you know, I mean, I don't want to say a punishment, but we always reward winning, and then I feel like very rarely now feel like there's a punishment for losing.
oh, I agree.
You know,
Yeah.
like
I
it just
illustrate.
doesn't seem like it. Like I got to a point where like I enjoy winning. I love winning to death. I hate losing. Like
Right.
the feeling is so much more extreme to me when we lose than when we win. Like when we win, I'm like, all right, cool. Like this feels good. And I need to do a better job of learning to enjoy winning. Like I tell myself that all the time. Like I want to enjoy winning more when we win. But losing is horrible. Like, and that feeling alone, like I think that's what kind of drove my work ethic. It wasn't because I wanted to win, it was because I didn't want to lose. And
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad. Like
Hey,
I've read a lot of books about it. There's some people that'll tell you like that's a bad mindset. Like, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe it is. Like, I wish I could enjoy winning more, but God, losing is horrible.
get out of my
Like,
head, dude.
yeah,
I could
Wow.
say the same thing about my career. I could say the same thing. Um, but I do think that, when people make mistakes that, there's nothing wrong with a little hurt being attached to that, because
yeah.
that should prompt kids to learn. And the reason why I say that is I have a hard problem with kids nowadays. Kind of everything is summary, everything is cursory. No one wants to cross the T's and dot the I's. And because they're so used to kind of everything being glossed over, they don't want to pay attention to those things and they don't really understand how that stuff affects, performance and how that's the stuff that ultimately shows itself at the moment you need it most,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
know,
I think that's that if when high school coaches and you guys, I think the more they put their guys in like tough situations, the better they're preparing them for this level.
yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think, you know, there's too many participation trophies and too many extra reps because you should get an extra rep. Well, this is the only rep you get, and this is what you're doing. We're playing a
Yeah.
scrimmage, losing team. You're doing the field, doing the equipment, all that stuff. There needs to be more competition. Athletes need to learn how to win and need to learn how to handle losing and handle adversity. We make it way too easy for athletes these days to be all right with losing, be all right with winning. Okay, we won, so what? There's not enough like internal like hurting loses, winning, I need to celebrate. People have taken that away from young athletes today.
Yeah.
On my watch, I'm not doing that personally. We need
Yeah.
to understand that if you want to play at the next level, winning needs to mean something, losing needs to mean something, and we need to stop making it easy for these athletes on the winning side and the losing side. There needs to be a line drawn in the sand today.
Yeah.
And that's how we're going to get athletes to the next level. That's how we're going to teach them how to compete, and not only in sport, but in life. And that's the biggest thing I see. So, hey, I said it. I got on my soapbox. Sorry, guys. Got
No,
Yeah.
great way to end it, man. I think those words were very appropriate, and I hope you guys who are out there listening to this podcast, I know sometimes they can get long in the tooth, but sometimes some of these best nuggets are at the end when we're closing out. So, well done, well said, EJ. Chris, man, just love having you in here and love the things that you said. Again, we're not always trying to get people on that are, of the same mindset or the same philosophy, but it's great to hear people who are in tune with us and have it articulated a different way from a different platform so that these people can see that there are some commonalities to being a winner, being a champion, and how to go about it. So I appreciate you,
I
Brett, taking.
appreciate you guys having me, man. It's definitely a good time, and I mean honestly, like if I would have told you, 20 years ago we'd be doing this, Aaron, like be like, what? So like it's cool, it's cool. It's really cool to just be in that just kind of, the coach to coach now. Like it's like I've got some guys that I've coached that are now becoming coaches, and I think that makes me more proud than like seeing players grow up and do well playing. Like seeing them become good coaches is like, man, like that's pretty cool. So I like talking to my mentors and things like this. So I appreciate you guys a lot.
Yeah, no, this has been special for me because of where we've been, our journey together. And I remember a time, and you probably don't remember this, but I remember a time when you were making the transition from football to baseball, and we were talking about it, and you were kind of like, I don't know about the baseball thing. And
Yeah.
we were standing out there at Freedom Field, and I just said, hey, man, look, you can do this. You can do
Yeah.
this. And just, again, I'm just to see us come from that conversation to where you are now really makes me feel so good, dude. And
Yeah.
one of the definitely most inspirational and one of the most fulfilling coaching experiences that I've had.
I
So
appreciate it. Thank you guys again.
job well done, man. Job well done.
Champions built is who we are. Thanks, Chris Bodislaw, for being here today. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
And I want to thank Brett Wallace too. And love to have you guys back. This is Coach Aaron, the Source. We'll see you.